The first thing people noticed about the Marquetti estate was the silence, not because it was quiet. A string quartet played beneath crystal chandeliers. Champagne glasses chimed together like tiny bells. Conversations floated through the marble halls in polished whispers. Luxury lived in every corner of the mansion. No, the silence came from the rules. Everyone knew them. Stand straight. Smile politely. Speak only when spoken to. Never embarrass the family. Especially not tonight. The annual Marquetti Foundation Gala was more than a charity event. It was where alliances were renewed, marriages quietly negotiated, and enemies reminded exactly who held the power. Every guest had been selected with surgical precision. Politicians, billionaires, fashion icons, old money aristocrats, and women who had spent months choosing dresses specifically designed to look expensive without appearing desperate. Every detail mattered. Except one. You're late. Elena Carter pushed a loose strand of chestnut hair behind her ear while balancing 3 garment bags over one shoulder. I know. The bride's bouquet hasn't arrived. I'll fix it. The lighting team is asking where to put the floral wall. I'll fix that too. The Marquettis don't tolerate mistakes. She smiled. Good thing I don't make many. Her headset crackled again before another voice interrupted. Ms. Carter, Mr. Bianchi wants someone upstairs immediately. I'm on my way. She ended the call and sighed. Luxury weddings. Luxury parties. Luxury families. They all had one thing in common. Everyone believed money made chaos invisible. It didn't. It simply hired someone else to clean it up. Tonight, that someone was Elena. As the lead event coordinator for Bellamy Weddings events, she had been called in only 48 hours earlier after another planner abruptly resigned. Rumor said she had cried. Rumor also said a Marquetti family member had made her cry. Neither surprised Elena. She reached the second floor, carrying a box of invitations. Halfway down the corridor, she nearly collided with a woman wearing diamonds large enough to finance a small country. The blonde looked Elena up and down. Very slowly. Her fitted emerald dress hugged her figure unapologetically. Her heels were practical rather than decorative. Her lipstick was bold. Nothing about her suggested someone trying to disappear. The blonde's smile sharpened. Oh. She glanced toward another woman. So they're hiring anyone now. Soft laughter followed. Elena simply smiled. Apparently, the blonde waited for embarrassment. None came. Instead, Elena stepped politely around them. Excuse me. She continued walking. Behind her, another whisper floated through the hallway. She could have chosen something more flattering. No wonder she's in event planning. I suppose confidence is free. The women laughed quietly. Elena didn't look back. People had opinions. Gravity also existed. Neither required her participation. Across the ballroom, Alessandro Marquetti wasn't listening. His uncle was discussing shipping contracts. His cousin wanted another introduction. His grandmother had already pointed out 3 eligible women before dinner. He couldn't remember any of their names. And Sofia Bellini's family owns half the vineyards in Tuscany. And Isabella Rossi graduated from Oxford. I see. And Bianca. I'm not getting married tonight. His grandmother sighed. You'll have to eventually. He looked across the ballroom. I know. At 32, Alessandro had become exactly what everyone expected. Tall, composed, dangerously handsome, always dressed in black. The future head of the Marquetti family. People assumed power made decisions easier. It didn't. It merely ensured everyone else tried making them for you. Every woman introduced to him had the same polished smile, the same rehearsed laugh, the same careful compliments. None ever looked at him. They looked at the empire. Then something unusual happened. Someone walked straight across the ballroom carrying a ladder. Not gliding, not posing, walking. Purposefully. She stopped beneath a chandelier. Looked up. Could someone hold this? 3 waiters froze. No one moved. She shrugged. I'll do it myself. She climbed halfway up without hesitation. A crystal ribbon hanging from the centerpiece had shifted. She fixed it in less than 20 seconds. When she climbed back down, she noticed dozens of guests staring. So, She smiled. Is it straight now? One waiter blinked. Perfect. Great. She dusted off her hands and continued toward another room, as if nothing unusual had happened. Alessandro found himself watching until she disappeared. His cousin noticed. Don't tell me. What? The event planner? I didn't say anything. You looked. I look at everyone. No. His cousin smirked. You looked twice. The evening progressed. Speeches, champagne, photographs, business conversations disguised as friendly reunions. Elena moved through every room with effortless efficiency, fixing table arrangements, redirecting musicians, comforting nervous servers, helping an elderly guest without making him feel old. Every problem dissolved before most people noticed it existed. She never demanded attention, yet somehow attention followed her anyway. Mostly because she refused to behave like everyone else. She laughed too loudly. She thanked staff by name. She ate an appetizer while walking between meetings instead of pretending she wasn't hungry. Several women frowned each time she passed. Several men noticed. Only one man kept watching. You've been distracted all evening. Alessandro turned. His younger sister Lucia stood beside him holding 2 glasses of champagne. I've been listening. Barely. She handed him a glass. So, what? Who is she? I don't know. You've asked the security chief who she is. I asked because she wasn't on the family list. Lucia laughed. Sure. He ignored her. She followed his gaze again. You know what's interesting? What? She doesn't care that you're watching. Most women noticed immediately when Alessandro Marquetti entered a room. Some straightened their posture. Others adjusted their dresses. A few deliberately crossed his path. Elena? She walked past him twice without so much as checking whether he existed. For the first time in years, someone treated him like just another man in a crowded room. And somehow, that unsettled him more than admiration ever had. Near midnight, a loud crash echoed from the west terrace. Guests gasped. A decorative lighting structure had collapsed after one of the support cables snapped. People stepped backward in panic. Without hesitation, Elena ran toward the scene. Everyone move away. Her voice cut cleanly through the confusion. You. She pointed toward 2 security guards. Clear this side. You call maintenance. The elderly guests first. No shouting. No hysteria. Just calm authority. Within moments, order returned. No injuries. No chaos. Only relieved breathing. Alessandro watched her kneel beside an elderly woman whose hands were trembling. You're all right. Elena smiled warmly. It was loud, but you're safe. The woman's breathing slowly steadied. When Elena finally stood, she realized someone was beside her. A tall man in a black suit. His expression unreadable. For the first time that evening, they looked directly at each other. Up close, his gray eyes were colder than winter, yet strangely tired. You handled that well, he said. So did your security team. They listened to you. They wanted people safe. A brief silence settled between them. He extended a hand. Alessandro Marquetti. She looked at it for a second before shaking it. Elena Carter. No wide eyes. No sudden nervousness. No recognition. Just a handshake. Firm. Confident. Equal. It lasted only a moment. Yet for reasons neither of them could explain, it felt like the first honest thing either had experienced all evening. Neither noticed the dozens of eyes watching from the ballroom windows. But the whispers had already begun. Who is she? Why is Alessandro talking to her? That's not supposed to happen. By sunrise, every member of the Marquetti family would know one name, Elena Carter. And before long, they would all discover something even more dangerous. She had never intended to belong in their world, but she would change it forever. The headlines the next morning had nothing to do with charity. The Marquetti Foundation Gala had raised millions. A senator had announced a new education initiative. A world-famous violinist had performed an exclusive arrangement. Yet inside the Marquetti family, none of that mattered. Only one subject dominated breakfast. Who was the woman Alessandro spoke to? The Marquetti estate woke early. Servants moved silently through the halls carrying silver trays and freshly brewed espresso. In the East Wing, family members gathered around a table long enough to seat 30 people. Every conversation eventually returned to the same topic. I've checked the guest list. There isn't a Carter among our invited families. So she isn't old money. Apparently not. One elderly aunt folded her napkin. Then why was Alessandro speaking to her? No one answered. At the head of the table, Don Vittorio Marquetti, the aging patriarch whose presence could silence an entire room with a glance, slowly placed his coffee cup onto its saucer. Find out. That was all he said. The room fell silent. No one questioned an order from the Don. Across the city, Elena Carter had already forgotten about Alessandro Marquetti. She had been awake since 6. Her apartment was small but bright, filled with plants that somehow survived despite her unpredictable work schedule. A whiteboard covered one wall. Wedding Timolinas, client names, delivery schedules. Her life was organized because chaos paid her bills. She poured herself a cup of coffee and opened her laptop. 37 unread emails. Normal. She answered them one by one. A florist needed approval. A bride wanted to change the ceremony colors again. A photographer had misplaced memory cards. Elena sighed. Monday. Her phone rang. It was her boss. Morning, Elena. Please tell me nobody got married without flowers. No. Good. They specifically requested you. She paused. Who? The Marquettis. Silence. Are you serious? They're planning another event. I thought last night was over. It is. They requested the same coordinator. Elena frowned. Why me? Her boss laughed. I was hoping you'd tell me. At Marquetti Holdings headquarters, Alessandro wasn't thinking about event planning. He was trying to survive another board meeting. TOTS. Profit forecasts. International acquisitions. 3 executives argued over logistics, while another discussed expansion into South America. Alessandro listened, mostly, until his assistant quietly entered the room. Mr. Marquetti, what is it? We found her. Several board members looked up. Alessandro blinked. Found who? The event coordinator. His assistant handed him a folder. Elena Carter. Occupation. Senior event coordinator. Former wedding photographer. Volunteer mentor at a youth arts foundation. No criminal record. No political affiliations. No wealthy relatives. No scandals. His assistant hesitated. There is one unusual thing. Alessandro raised an eyebrow. She turns down celebrity clients. Several executives looked confused. Why? His assistant flipped another page. According to former clients, he cleared his throat. She refuses to work with people who mistreat staff. Silence. One executive laughed. That's ridiculous. Another shrugged. Or admirable. Alessandro continued reading. Every recommendation described the same woman. Professional. Direct. Calm under pressure. Impossible to intimidate. Interesting. Later that afternoon, Elena arrived at Marquetti Holdings carrying a tablet and a notebook. She wore fitted navy trousers, a crisp white blouse with rolled sleeves, and low heels designed for walking rather than impressing. The receptionist smiled politely. Ms. Carter. Yes. They're expecting you. The elevator climbed toward the 43rd floor. Luxury surrounded her. Glass, steel, minimalist art worth more than her apartment. She barely noticed. Buildings were buildings. Rich people simply preferred taller ones. The elevator doors opened. An assistant greeted her immediately. This way. She entered a conference room larger than most restaurants. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city skyline. At the far end stood Alessandro Marquetti. Black suit. Notie. Hands resting on the table. He looked exactly as intimidating as she remembered. He also looked exhausted. He turned. You came. She smiled. I was hired. A faint smile touched the corner of his mouth. Barely. The meeting began. The family is hosting a private engagement dinner in 3 weeks, Alessandro explained. Elena glanced up. Congratulations. He looked almost uncomfortable. It's not my engagement. Oh. My cousins. That makes more sense. He actually laughed. Very quietly. The assistant standing near the door nearly dropped his tablet. Had Mr. Marquetti laughed. As Elena reviewed venue layouts, she frowned. This won't work. Alessandro looked at the plans. Why not? Because you're expecting 150 guests. Correct. This dining arrangement seats 128. We'll add tables. She shook her head. Then nobody will be able to move. She grabbed a pen. Within seconds, she redrew the layout. Move the orchestra here. Open this wall. Relocate the dessert station. Now your guests naturally circulate instead of creating bottlenecks. The room fell silent. One executive frowned. That wasn't part of the proposal. No. Elena smiled. It was part of solving the problem. Alessandro studied the sketch. Simple. Practical. Better. You did that in 30 seconds. I've had worse floor plans. He looked at her differently now. Not because of confidence. Because competence was attractive in ways beauty alone never could be. When the meeting ended, most executives left. Elena packed her notebook. I'll send revised designs tonight. You don't have to rush. I know. She closed her bag. I just like finishing things. As she reached the door, Alessandro spoke again. Ms. Carter. She turned. You never asked why we specifically requested you. She shrugged. I assumed you liked my work. You didn't think there was another reason? She smiled knowingly. If there is. She adjusted the strap on her bag. It's probably your problem, not mine. Then she walked away, leaving Alessandro standing in complete silence. Again. Outside the conference room, two women watched Elena disappear down the hallway. One crossed her arms. That's her. The other nodded. I expected someone different. The taller woman narrowed her eyes. So did I. She was breathtaking, elegant, perfectly dressed. Every magazine in Europe had photographed her at least once. Her name was Sofia Bellini, daughter of one of Italy's wealthiest families, future political donor, media darling, and, according to both families, the woman destined to become Alessandro Marquetti's wife. She had spent years preparing for that role. Now, for the first time, someone unexpected had stepped onto the board. Sophia smiled. It was a beautiful smile. It never reached her eyes. So, she said softly, let's see how confident Ms. Carter really is. That evening, Alessandro stood alone on the balcony outside his office. The city glittered beneath him. His phone buzzed. A message from his sister Lucia. Lucia, father heard about the planner. Another message arrived. Lucia, grandmother heard you laughed. A third message. Lucia, Sophia is furious. He sighed. Then another notification appeared. It wasn't from family. It was an email. From Elena Carter. Subject: Revised event proposal. Attached were 38 pages. Every schedule. Every contingency plan. Every emergency exit. Every supplier. Every possible problem already solved. At the very bottom, handwritten notes scanned into the final page read, good planning isn't about preventing surprises. It's about making sure no one notices them. Elena. For reasons he couldn't explain, Alessandro read that sentence 3 times. Outside, storm clouds gathered over the city. Inside the Marquetti family, a much bigger storm had already begun. Alessandro Marquetti had spent most of his life surrounded by people who wanted something from him. That was the nature of his world. People wanted his family's influence, his father's connections, his future position, his name. The Marquetti name had existed for generations, built on power, fear, and loyalty. Everyone who entered their circle understood the rules. They smiled because they needed something. They complimented because they expected something. They stayed close because distance from the Marquetti family was dangerous. Alessandro had learned long ago that sincerity was rare, which was exactly why Elena Carter confused him. She didn't want anything. And that was the most suspicious thing about her. 3 days after the gala, Alessandro found himself staring at a security report. Not a business report. Not a family document. A security report. About Elena Carter. He frowned. Why am I reading this? His assistant, Marco, stood across from his desk. Because you asked for it. I asked about the event. Marco remained silent. Alessandro looked up. You noticed that too? Everyone noticed. Everyone needs a hobby. Marco carefully placed another folder on the desk. You should know something. What? She has been contacted by 3 different luxury companies since the gala. And all offering her higher positions. Alessandro glanced at the information. And she refused. Yes. Why? Marco hesitative. She said she prefers working independently. A small silence followed. Most people spent years trying to get closer to wealthy families. Elena Carter had opportunities to enter their world. And she walked away. That afternoon, Elena returned to the Marquetti estate. Not as a guest. Not as someone seeking approval. As a professional. She walked through the front entrance carrying fabric samples, lighting plans, and a coffee she had bought for herself. Several servants recognized her. Some smiled. Others whispered. She noticed. Of course she noticed. She simply didn't care. A lifetime of being judged had taught her something important. People's opinions were often just reflections of their own insecurity. You're early. Elena looked up. Alessandro stood at the end of the hallway. Today he wasn't wearing a formal suit. Just a black shirt with the sleeves rolled up. For a moment, he looked less like a Mafia heir, more like a tired man. I prefer early. Most people prefer making an entrance. She smiled. Most people aren't trying to make sure your cousin's engagement party doesn't collapse. A faint amusement appeared in his eyes. You always talk like that. Like what? Like you're not standing in front of someone who could ruin your entire career. Elena tilted her head. Could you? The question caught him off guard. What? Could you ruin my career? He didn't answer immediately. Because technically, yes. A single phone call from Alessandro Marquetti could make many doors close. Elena watched his expression. Then she smiled. See? What? You hesitated. And that means you don't want to. For the first time in a long time, Alessandro didn't know what to say. The preparation continued throughout the day. Elena moved through the mansion with confidence. She spoke to chefs, checked measurements, adjusted decorations. She didn't treat the staff like servants. She treated them like teammates. Something Alessandro noticed. Something his family rarely did. At one point, he saw her helping an older housekeeper carry a heavy box. You don't need to do that. The woman immediately stepped back. I'm sorry, Mr. Marquetti. Elena looked between them. What? Alessandro looked at the box. You're the event coordinator. And you hired people to do this. She smiled. Yes. Then why are you doing it? Because she was carrying something heavier than she should. The answer was so simple. So obvious. Yet somehow it surprised him. Later that evening, Alessandro's mother arrived. Isabella Marquetti, a woman known throughout European society for elegance and control. She had never raised her voice. She didn't need to. Her disappointment was enough. She entered the ballroom and immediately noticed Elena. Not because Elena was trying to stand out. Because she wasn't trying hard enough to disappear. Isabella approached slowly. Miss Carter. Elena turned. Mrs. Marquetti, I heard you managed the gala. Yes. You did well. Thank you. A pause. Then Isabella's eyes traveled briefly over Elena's outfit. Not rude. Not openly. But enough. You have an interesting style. Elena smiled. I've heard that before. I imagine you have. The word sounded polite. The meaning was not. Before Elena could respond, another voice interrupted. Mother. Alessandro walked toward them. Isabella smiled. Alessandro. Her eyes moved between them. You seem unusually interested in this project. It's an important event. Of course. A pause. Especially since the coordinator is memorable. Elena understood immediately. She had entered a room where everyone spoke in expensive sentences. Every compliment carried a hidden blade. She had no interest in playing that game. I'll check the West Hall. She turned away. But Alessandro stopped her. Elena. She looked back. I'll come with you. The room became quiet. Very quiet. Isabella noticed. Everyone noticed. Because Alessandro Marquetti did not follow people. People followed him. The West Hall was empty. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Elena laughed softly. You know, everyone is talking. I know. They think something is happening. Is something happening? The question was unexpected. Elena looked at him. There was no arrogance in his voice. Only curiosity. I don't know. You're not afraid? Of what? My family. She looked around a luxurious hallway. Should I be? Most people would have answered differently. They would have admitted fear. They would have tried to impress him. Elena simply waited. Alessandro studied her. You really don't care? No. Why? She thought for a moment, then answered honestly. Because I spent years trying to make myself smaller. That surprised him. She continued. Smaller clothes, smaller opinions, smaller dreams. Her fingers touched the edge of a tablecloth she was adjusting. And one day I realized. She looked at him. The world was never going to stop judging me just because I stopped being myself. The hallway fell silent. Alessandro had heard thousands of speeches. From politicians, business leaders, family members. None stayed with him. But those words did. That night, Sofia Bellini arrived at the estate. She entered wearing a custom-made gown from Paris. Every detail was perfect. The color, the jewelry, the hairstyle, the image. She was exactly what the Marquetti family wanted. A woman who belonged beside Alessandro. She found him in the library. Alessandro. He looked up. Sofia. She smiled. I heard about your new event coordinator. There it was. The first move. I assume you have an opinion. I only think. She walked closer. People should understand their place. Alessandro's expression changed slightly. Sofia. What? Be careful. She stopped. Because Alessandro rarely warned anyone. You sound like you're talking about someone beneath you. Sofia's smile faded. I didn't mean. I know exactly what you meant. A long silence. Then she looked away. You're defending her. No. Alessandro closed the book in front of him. I'm correcting you. But even after Sofia left, he knew something had changed. Because for the first time, he had defended someone without thinking. The next morning, Elena arrived at the estate and found a package waiting for her. Inside was a designer dress. Expensive, elegant, impossible to afford. Along with a note. No signature. Only one sentence. For the engagement dinner. Wear something that reminds them you belong wherever you stand. Elena stared at it. She knew exactly who sent it. And that bothered her. Not because she disliked the gift. Because a small part of her, like that someone finally saw her. Not as decoration. Not as a problem. But as a person. And somewhere inside the Marquetti mansion, Alessandro Marquetti was beginning to realize the same thing. The woman everyone whispered about was the only person who had ever made him feel understood. The dress arrived at 9 in the morning. By 9:15, Elena had already decided she wasn't going to wear it. Not because it wasn't beautiful. It was. The dress was the kind of thing most women would dream about. Deep midnight blue silk. A perfectly tailored waist. A simple but elegant design that emphasized confidence rather than hiding anything. It was expensive without being desperate. Powerful without being aggressive. Exactly the kind of dress that belonged at a Marquetti event. And that was the problem. It belonged to their world. Not hers. Elena stood in front of her apartment mirror, holding the dress against herself. For a moment, she remembered being younger. Standing in clothing stores with her friends. Watching other women choose outfits. Hearing comments. Maybe choose something less noticeable. That color will attract too much attention. You have a beautiful face. Don't ruin it by wearing things like that. People always had advice. How to sit. How to walk. How much space to take. How much confidence was acceptable. For years, Elena listened. Until one day she stopped. She didn't become confident because the world accepted her. She became confident because she stopped waiting for permission. She put the dress back into the box. Then her phone rang. "You're declining a Marquetti gift?" Her best friend Mia's voice came through the speaker. Elena laughed. "That sounds dramatic." "Because it is dramatic. It's just a dress." "No, Elena." Mia paused. "It's a message." Elena sat down. "I know." "Then why are you refusing it?" She didn't answer immediately. Because the truth was complicated. She wasn't afraid of the dress. She was afraid of what it meant. A gift from Alessandro Marquetti was not just kindness. In his world, everything had consequences. Mia sighed. "You know what's funny?" "What?" 6 months ago, you told me you wanted someone to see you exactly as you are." Elena smiled faintly. "That doesn't mean I want someone powerful deciding where I belong." "Maybe he isn't deciding. Then what is he doing?" Mia was quiet. Finally she said, "Maybe he's reminding you that you don't have to fight every battle alone." At the Marquetti estate, Alessandro was having a very different conversation. With his grandmother. The woman who had controlled family decisions for decades. "You sent her a dress." It wasn't a question. Alessandro looked up from his documents. "Yes." "Why?" "Because she needed one." His grandmother stared at him. "No." "What?" "That is not why." Silence. Alessandro returned to his papers. "You've always been terrible at lying." "I'm not lying." "You're protecting." He didn't respond. The elderly woman smiled slightly. "Interesting." "What?" "I spent 30 years watching men chase women who wanted their names." She leaned back. "And now my grandson is interested in a woman who doesn't care about his." The engagement dinner arrived, and with it came the entire world of the Marquetti family. The mansion transformed. Hundreds of flowers, crystal decorations, cameras waiting outside, guests arriving in luxury cars. Everyone came prepared, especially Sofia Bellini. She arrived exactly 15 minutes after the official starting time. Not late, never late, just enough to make people wait. She stepped out of the car wearing a white gown. Not bridal white. Not yet, but close enough. The photographers loved her. She smiled perfectly. The future Mrs. Marquetti. At least, that was the story everyone believed. Inside the ballroom, Elena arrived quietly. She almost regretted wearing the dress. Almost. Then she remembered something. Confidence was not about making people comfortable. It was about being comfortable with yourself. She entered, and immediately felt it. The room changed. Not dramatically. Not loudly. Just enough. Conversations slowed. Eyes turned. Some admiring. Some judging. Some calculating. Elena continued walking. Her shoulders relaxed. Her head held high. She wasn't trying to compete. She wasn't trying to win. She was simply there. Alessandro saw her immediately and forgot what he was about to say. His cousin noticed. Again. "Careful." Alessandro looked away. "What?" "You keep staring." "I don't." "You absolutely do." He ignored him, but he couldn't deny it. The woman entering the ballroom wasn't trying to become part of his world. She was bringing her own world with her. And somehow, that made everyone else look smaller. Sophia noticed too. Of course she did. She approached with a smile. "Elena." "Miss Bellini, please." Sophia looked at her dress. "Call me Sophia." A pause. "You look different tonight." "Thank you." "I meant it as a compliment." "I know." That answer bothered Sophia, because Elena didn't sound offensive. She sounded calm. Sophia looked around. Events like this can be intimidating for people unfamiliar with them. Elena picked up a glass of water. "I imagine they can. I only mean." Sophia lowered her voice. "Some environments require a certain understanding." Elena smiled. "You're right." Sophia seemed surprised. "You agree?" "Of course." Elena looked around the room. "Every environment has rules." "Exactly. But some rules exist to protect traditions." Elena took a sip. "And some exist because people are afraid of change." For the first time, Sophia's expression cracked. Only slightly. But Elena saw it. Later that evening, the family dinner began. Everyone gathered around the enormous table. The conversation was elegant, controlled, until Sophia's mother spoke. Alessandro, your grandmother mentioned the event coordinator helped organize tonight. Yes, she seems capable. Although I suppose experience can come from many places. Elena continued eating quietly. She knew this game. Someone throws a small insult. Everyone pretends they didn't hear. The target either reacts and looks emotional, or stays silent and appears weak. There was a third option. Ignore it. But before she could decide, Alessandro placed his glass down. Elena's work speaks for itself. The table became quiet. His tone wasn't angry. That made it more powerful. Sophia looked at him. Nobody questioned her ability. Then there was no reason to mention where it came from. A few family members looked away, because they understood. Alessandro had drawn a line. After dinner, Elena found him outside. The night air was cool. You didn't have to do that. Alessandro stood beside the balcony railing. Do what? Defend me? I wasn't defending you. She smiled. You're using that excuse again. A small silence. Then he admitted, I don't like watching people judge someone without knowing them. Elena looked at him. That sounds surprisingly normal for someone everyone calls dangerous. He almost smiled. People exaggerate. Do they? Sometimes. She studied him. Are you afraid of disappointing your family? The question was direct. Most people avoided asking him personal things. He should have disliked it. Instead, he answered, yes. The honesty surprised both of them. They expect me to become something. What? He looked back at the mansion. A symbol. And what do you want? The answer came slower. I don't know. Elena nodded. That's probably the most honest thing you've said. Inside the ballroom, Sophia watched them through the window. Together. Talking. Laughing quietly. Not performing. Not pretending. Something real. And Sophia understood something she hated. The problem wasn't Elena's dress. Her background. Her confidence. The problem was much worse. Alessandro liked who he was around her. The next day, rumors spread through the Marquetti circle. Not about a wedding. Not about business. About a woman who walked into the most powerful family in Italy and somehow made their future heir forget the rules. But nobody knew the most dangerous secret yet. Elena Carter wasn't just changing Alessandro's heart. Soon, she would uncover a threat inside the Marquetti family itself. And when that happened, everyone who underestimated her would learn one thing. She was never the woman who needed saving. She was the woman who saved them. The Marquetti family had a tradition. Every generation, before the heir officially took control, they held a private gathering called the Circle. It wasn't written in any legal document. It wasn't announced publicly. But everyone who mattered knew about it. A room, a table, the most powerful people connected to the family. A place where decisions were made before the outside world ever heard about them. And this year, for the first time in decades, someone unexpected was invited. Elena stared at the invitation in her hand. Not an email. Not a message. A physical card. Heavy black paper. Silver lettering. A Marquetti seal pressed into the corner. She turned it over twice. This has to be a mistake. Mia looked at the card. No. Yes. Elena. They invited me to a private family meeting. Yes. Why? Mia shrugged. Maybe because you're dating the future Mafia boss. Elena almost choked on her coffee. I'm not dating anyone. Yet. Mia. What? There is no yet. Her friend smiled. That's exactly what someone says before the yet happens. Elena ignored her. But she couldn't ignore the invitation, because she knew what it meant. The Marquetti family didn't include outsiders. Not unless there was a reason. At the same time, Alessandro was having an argument with his father, the current head of the Marquetti family, Dante Marquetti, a man whose reputation alone had made enemies reconsider their choices. You invited her. It was not a question. Alessandro stood in his father's office. Yes. Why? Because she has been working with a family for weeks. That is not an answer. Dante looked out the window. You understand what people will say? Alessandro remained silent. His father continued. They will assume she has influence over you. She doesn't. Then why is she there? Alessandro looked directly at him. Because she earned it. A long silence. Dante turned around. Earned it? Yes. Through event planning. Through seeing problems everyone else ignored. That is enough to enter our inner circle? No. Alessandro paused. Her character is. The circle meeting took place 3 days later. The location was an old villa outside the city. Not the luxurious mansion where guests came for appearances. This place was different. Older. Quieter. Built when the Marquetti family had first established itself. Stone walls. Dark wooden floors. Family portraits watching from every hallway. History lived there. So did pressure. When Elena arrived, she immediately felt the difference. At regular events, people judged her clothes. Here, they judged everything. Her walk, her expression, her confidence, the way she looked at people. A group of older family members stood near the entrance. One man whispered, "She's really here." Another answered, "Apparently, an outsider." Exactly. Elena heard them. She always heard. But she continued walking. Alessandro met her at the entrance. You came. She looked at him. You sound surprised. I thought you might refuse. I considered it. Why didn't you? She looked at the villa. Because someone invited me. A pause. And I don't run away just because people expect me to. For a second, Alessandro forgot to answer. Because that sentence perfectly described her. She never fought for attention. She simply refused to surrender her place. The meeting began. 20 people sat around a long wooden table. Elena was the only outsider. She noticed immediately. Everyone else wore expensive suits, perfect watches, family jewelry, generational wealth. She wore a simple dark dress and carried a notebook. Not because she wanted to look different, because she was prepared. That difference mattered. Dante Marquetti opened the meeting. We have several concerns regarding the upcoming expansion. Financial reports appeared. Security issues. Business negotiations. International partnerships. Elena listened quietly. She wasn't there to speak. She understood that, until she noticed something. A pattern. One name appeared repeatedly. A supplier. A company responsible for logistics. The same company had delayed deliveries. The same company had increased costs. The same company had access to Marquetti operations. She frowned. Alessandro noticed. He leaned slightly toward her. You see something. She hesitated. Everyone was watching. She wasn't a family member. She wasn't an advisor. She had no official position. But she also knew something. And staying silent when she could prevent a problem wasn't who she was. Maybe. The room became quiet. Dante looked at her. Maybe. Elena straightened. Sorry. No. His voice was calm. Continue. She opened her notebook. The logistics company you're discussing. A few people exchanged looks. Yes. They've been late on 3 major deliveries. One executive nodded. Temporary issues. Maybe. She continued. But their insurance claims increased at the same time. Silence. Alessandro looked at the documents. How do you know that? I reviewed previous event contracts. Event contracts? Large events require suppliers. She pointed at the report. These numbers don't look like random delays. One man frowned. Are you suggesting fraud? No. Elena looked at him. I'm suggesting someone should investigate before assuming it nothing. The room remained silent. Because she didn't accuse. She didn't attack. She simply noticed. Something many powerful people failed to do. Alessandro's father looked at the documents. Then at her. Interesting. That single word carried more weight than any compliment. After the meeting, Alessandro found her outside. You surprised them. I wasn't trying to. I know. He smiled slightly. That's why it worked. She leaned against the balcony. Your family is intense. You noticed. Hard not to. A quiet laugh escaped him. Then his expression changed. Thank you. For what? For speaking. Elena looked at him. You could have said the same thing. I could. But you wanted to see if I was right? A pause. Yes. She nodded. I understand. For a moment, neither spoke. The city lights spread below them. Then Alessandro said, most people around my family try to prove they belong. Elena looked at him. I don't. I know. Do you know why? He waited. Because belonging isn't something someone gives you. She smiled softly. It's something you decide for yourself. Those words stayed with him. But inside the villa, not everyone was impressed. Sofia Bellini stood in the hallway. She had watched everything. The way Alessandro looked at Elena. The way his father listened. The way the room respected her. A woman who had entered their world with no family name. No fortune. No connections. And somehow, she was becoming impossible to ignore. Sofia's expression hardened. She walked toward her mother. We need to do something. Her mother looked at her. About Elena? Sofia nodded. Before she becomes someone they cannot remove. That night, Elena returned home exhausted. She placed the invitation on her table. The Marquetti family. The villa. The meeting. Everything felt unreal. She had spent years building a life away from powerful people. Away from complicated families. Away from worlds where every smile had a hidden meaning. Yet somehow, she had stepped into the center of one. Her phone buzzed. A message from Alessandro. Alessandro, thank you for today. She stared at it. Then another message arrived. Alessandro, and for what it's worth. A pause. Then, you were never an outsider in that room. Elena looked at the screen. For the first time in years, she didn't feel like she had to defend her place, because someone had finally seen it. Not her appearance, not her confidence, not the way she dressed. Her. But neither of them knew that someone else had been watching. Someone who didn't care about love, or family, or reputation. Someone who saw Elena Carter as a threat. And they were about to remind the Marquetti family of one old rule. Anyone who gets close to the heir becomes a target. The first rumor appeared 3 days later. Then the second. Then dozens. In the world of the Marquetti family, rumors did not spread like ordinary gossip. They moved like weapons. Quietly. Precisely. Always with a target. And this time the target was Elena Carter. The event planner is getting too close to Alessandro. She thinks she can become part of the family. People like her always want something. She knows how to act innocent. The comments appeared at private dinners, luxury boutiques, exclusive clubs, places where wealthy people gathered and pretended they weren't watching each other. Elena knew. Of course she knew. But she continued working. Because she had learned something years ago. When people wanted you to react, silence was sometimes the strongest answer. The problem was, Alessandro noticed. He noticed everything. The way conversations stopped when Elena entered a room. The way some guests became suddenly polite. The way certain family members smiled at her while their eyes remained cold. And he hated it. Not because Elena couldn't handle it. She could. That was exactly what bothered him. She handled everything alone. You're angry. Elena looked up from the seating chart. I am. Yes. She studied him. You're very sure about that. I know what anger looks like. Do you? A small smile appeared. You're questioning me? Absolutely. Most people avoided challenging Alessandro Marquetti. Elena did it casually. Almost naturally. It fascinated him. You don't seem worried. About rumors? Yes. She placed her pen down. People have been judging me since before they knew my name. And that doesn't bother you. It bothers me. The honesty surprised him. She continued. But being bothered doesn't mean changing. Alessandro sat across from her. Why are you like this? Elena raised an eyebrow. Like what? You're surrounded by people with more money, more power, more influence. And, and you act like none of it matters. She thought for a moment. It doesn't. That's not true. No. No one is completely unaffected by power. Elena smiled slightly. You're right. She looked at him. But power only works if you believe someone else has the right to decide your value. The room became quiet. Alessandro looked at her. Because, once again, she had said something simple. Something he had never considered. That evening, the family held another gathering. A private dinner. Officially, it was to discuss business. Unofficially, everyone knew why they were there. They wanted to see Alessandro and Elena together. Sophia arrived first. She looked flawless. As always, her dress was elegant. Her jewelry was subtle. Her expression was perfectly controlled. She approached Alessandro with a smile. You've been busy. Yes. With work. He looked at her. Mostly. The slight pause told her everything. Mostly. Not completely. Her smile remained. How is Miss Carter? Fine. I heard she has been receiving attention. She doesn't seek it. Maybe not. Sophia picked up her glass. But attention follows certain people. Alessandro's expression hardened. Sophia, what? Be careful. Again. That warning. She hated it. Because it meant Elena already occupied a space in his thoughts. When Elena arrived, the atmosphere changed. Not because she tried to command attention. Because she refused to ask permission. She wore a simple black dress. No expensive jewelry. No designer logo. No attempt to compete with the women around her. And somehow, that made her impossible to overlook. Dinner began. For 30 minutes, everything remained polite. Until Alessandro's uncle, Lorenzo, spoke. Elena. She looked up. Yes. You've worked with many wealthy clients. Some. Do you find it difficult? Difficult. Entering environments like ours. The table became quiet. Everyone understood the question. It wasn't about work. It was about belonging. Elena placed her fork down. I find every environment has challenges. Lorenzo smiled. A diplomatic answer. It's an honest one. And what is the biggest challenge here? Elena looked around the table. At the powerful family. The expensive suits. The careful expressions. Then she answered. People assuming they already know someone before meeting them. Silence. A few people looked away. Because everyone understood. Lorenzo leaned back. Interesting. Then he smiled. Confidence is admirable. A pause. But sometimes confidence hides insecurity. The attack was subtle. Almost elegant. Elena recognized it. She had heard similar words before. You're too confident. You're trying too hard. You're compensating. The message was always the same. Know your place. Before Elena could answer, Alessandro spoke. Enough. Everyone looked at him. His voice was calm, but absolute. Lorenzo raised an eyebrow. We are having a conversation. No. Alessandro looked at him. You're testing her. The room froze. Because he said it openly. Without pretending. Lorenzo smiled. And she doesn't need to prove anything to you. Elena turned toward him. For a second, she almost told him not to interfere. She didn't need protection. But then she saw his expression. This wasn't pity. This wasn't treating her as weak. He wasn't saving her. He was standing beside her. There was a difference. After dinner, Elena went outside. The garden was quiet. A few minutes later, Alessandro followed. You didn't have to do that. I know. She looked at him. Then why? He thought about it. Because the answer mattered. Finally. Because they were wrong. A simple answer. But somehow more meaningful than a grand speech. Elena looked away. You know what's strange? What? Most people think confidence means you don't need anyone. She smiled faintly. But sometimes the strongest people are just the ones who know who deserves to stand beside them. Alessandro watched her. And for the first time, He wondered if maybe he had spent his entire life misunderstanding strength. The next morning, something happened. Something that changed everything. A photo appeared online. Not from the gala. Not from a public event. Private photograph. Alessandro and Elena standing together outside the Marquetti villa. The angle made it look intimate. The headline was brutal. Marquetti heir abandons family expectations for unknown woman. Within hours, the entire city knew. The comments exploded. The family was furious. The investors were concerned. The media wanted answers. And Elena received a message from an unknown number. Only one sentence. You should have stayed invisible. She stared at the screen. For the first time, the situation was no longer about gossip. Someone had moved from words to threats. Across the city, Alessandro read the same news. His expression changed. Not anger. Something colder. He called Marco immediately. Find out who leaked the photo. Yes, sir. And Marco? Yes. Alessandro looked at Elena's picture on the screen. His voice became quiet. Nobody threatens her. A pause. Nobody. But what Alessandro didn't know was this. The person behind the threat wasn't trying to scare Elena away. They were trying to force Alessandro to choose family or her. And soon, the entire Marquetti world would witness the answer. The Marquetti family had survived wars, business conflicts, betrayals, enemies who spent years planning their revenge. But there was one thing the family understood better than anything else. A scandal could destroy a reputation faster than a bullet. And now, for the first time in years, the Marquetti name was being questioned. Because of a woman who had no family name, no fortune, no protection, only herself. By noon, every major news outlet had picked up the story. Not because Elena had done anything wrong, because Alessandro Marquetti had never allowed anyone into his private world. The public knew his business. They knew his family. They knew his reputation. But they did not know his feelings. And now they had a photograph. A single moment. A single glance. A single question. Who was Elena Carter? At Marquetti headquarters, the atmosphere was tense. Executives whispered. Phones rang constantly. Assistants moved quickly through the halls. Everyone was waiting for Alessandro's response. He walked into the conference room without saying a word. The room immediately became silent. Dante Marquetti sat at the end of the table. His expression was unreadable. Do you understand what this has caused? Alessandro removed his coat. Yes. The investors are asking questions. Then answer them. That is not the issue. Dante looked directly at him. The issue is that people believe you are losing control. A pause. Alessandro's eyes narrowed. Because I spoke to someone. Because you allowed someone to become a weakness. The words hung in there. Everyone heard them. Everyone understood. A weakness. That was how powerful families viewed love. Not as something valuable. As something dangerous. Alessandro leaned forward. She is not a weakness. Dante remained calm. Then prove it. A silence. Remove yourself from the situation. No. The answer came immediately. Too immediately. Several executives exchanged looks. Dante noticed. You already chose. Alessandro looked at his father. No. His voice was steady. I chose not to become someone who sacrifices innocent people just to make others comfortable. Meanwhile, Elena was having her own battle. Not with the Marquetti family. With herself. She sat in her apartment staring at the threatening message. She had dealt with criticism before. She had dealt with judgment. But this was different. Because now her choices affected someone else. Alessandro. His family. His reputation. His entire world. Maybe she should leave. Maybe that would solve everything. Her phone rang. Mia. You saw the news? Yes. How are you? Elena looked out the window. Fine. Mia was silent. Elena. What? You always say you're fine when you're about to make a terrible decision. She smiled weakly. I'm considering stepping away. I knew it. Mia. No. Her friend's voice became serious. Listen to me. You didn't chase his money. You didn't chase his name. You didn't enter that world because you wanted something. A pause. You entered because you were doing your job. Elena closed her eyes. And now my presence is causing problems. Or maybe your presence is exposing problems that were already there. The sentence stayed with her. That evening, Alessandro came to see her. Not with security. Not with assistance. Alone. Elena opened the door and immediately knew something was wrong. You shouldn't be here. Why? Because people are watching. I know. Then why? He looked at her. Because you disappeared. She frowned. I answered your messages. 3 words each. She looked away. Because he was right. You don't get to do that. Her eyes returned to him. Do what? Decide alone that leaving is easier. The words surprised her. Because they sounded almost angry. Almost personal. Alessandro. No. He stepped closer. You think walking away protects me, doesn't it? No. The answer was immediate. It makes you believe they were right. Elena became quiet. Who? Everyone who ever told you to make yourself smaller. The words hit harder than she expected. Because he understood. Not the situation. The feeling. You don't understand. Then explain. She laughed softly. You are Alessandro Marquetti, and you have never had to prove you belong anywhere. A pause. Then he answered. You're wrong. She looked at him. My entire life, everyone decided what I should be. He looked toward the city. The perfect heir. The perfect son. The perfect leader. His voice lowered. But nobody ever asked if that was what I wanted. For the first time, Elena saw it. Not the powerful man. Not the Mafia heir. The person underneath. Someone trapped by expectations just like her. Different cage. Same feeling. The next evening was the Marquetti Foundation's annual charity auction. The family had planned to avoid media attention. But avoiding attention was impossible now, especially after the rumors. The entire elite society would be there, and everyone wanted to see one thing. Would Alessandro bring Elena? The answer arrived when his car stopped outside the mansion. The door opened. Alessandro stepped out first. Then he turned and offered his hand. Elena took it. Together, they walked inside. The room froze. Whispers immediately started. She actually came. He brought her publicly. This is a mistake. But Elena didn't look at them. She looked ahead, because she had learned something important. You could never control what people saw, only what you showed them. The auction began. Everything was perfect. Until Sophia arrived. She walked into the ballroom surrounded by cameras. Her smile was flawless. Her timing was intentional. She approached Alessandro. May I speak with you? No. The answer surprised everyone. Sophia's expression changed. Alessandro. We have nothing to discuss. A dangerous silence. Then Sophia turned toward Elena. Perhaps I should speak with her instead. Elena understood immediately. This was not a conversation. It was a performance. Sophia smiled. I wanted to apologize. Elena raised an eyebrow. For what? For the misunderstanding. Which misunderstanding? Sophia glanced around. People are saying you are trying to become something you are not. The room became quiet. Everyone listened. Elena remained calm. And what exactly am I trying to become? Sophia smiled. A Marquetti. The sentence was simple. But everyone understood the meaning. You don't belong here. Elena looked at her, then smiled. That's interesting. Sophia frowned. Why? Because I never said I wanted to become one. A pause. I came here as myself. The room became quieter. And if that isn't enough for some people, Elena lifted her glass. That's something they have to solve, not me. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then applause came. Not from the guests. From Alessandro. Slowly, clearly, deliberately. Everyone turned. He looked at Elena, not Sophia, not the family, her, and said, that is exactly why I respect her. But the night wasn't over. Because seconds later, the lights went out. The entire mansion fell into darkness. A scream came from the ballroom. Security rushed forward. Emergency lights flickered on. And on the main screen where the auction presentation had been displayed, a message appeared. Not from the media. Not from an enemy. From someone inside. The Marquetti family protects everyone except the person standing beside their heir. The room erupted. Alessandro's expression turned cold. Because now he knew. This was not an attack on Elena. It was a declaration of war against him. And whoever was behind it was close enough to know exactly where to strike. The ballroom had never been this quiet. Not during negotiations. Not during family disputes. Not even during funerals. Because silence was something the Marquetti family understood. Silence meant danger. The message remained frozen on the giant screen. The Marquetti family protects everyone except the person standing beside their heir. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Hundreds of wealthy guests stood beneath crystal chandeliers, suddenly reminded that behind the elegant suits and expensive dresses was a family built on power. A family with enemies. A family with secrets. A family that was no longer pretending this was only gossip. Alessandro walked toward the screen. His expression had completely changed. The warmth he showed Elena disappeared. Not because he was angry with her. Because someone had crossed a line. Marco, his security chief, rushed forward. We're checking the system now. How long? 5 minutes. Alessandro looked at him. 2. Marco nodded immediately. Everyone nearby noticed. Because Alessandro Marquetti rarely raised his voice. He didn't need to. People listened before he finished speaking. Dante Marquetti approached. This is exactly why outsiders cannot be involved. Elena heard him. She turned. The old man's words were calm, but the meaning was clear. This happened because of her. Alessandro stepped between them. No. Dante looked at his son. You don't know that. I know exactly what happened. You are emotional. No. Alessandro's voice became colder. I am paying attention. The room froze. Because for the first time, he challenged his father publicly. Elena touched his arm. Alessandro. He looked at her. She shook her head slightly. Not because she wanted him to stay quiet. Because she understood. This was not about winning an argument. This was about preventing the family from breaking apart. She stepped forward. Mr. Marquetti. Dante looked at her. Yes. I understand why you think I am the problem. Several guests looked surprised. Elena continued. But I think that is exactly what whoever did this wanted. Silence. She looked toward the screen. They didn't attack the family because I was here. They attacked because they knew everyone would blame me first. Alessandro watched her carefully. Because she had understood the situation faster than most people in the room. Marco returned. Mr. Marquetti. Everyone turned. We found the source. Who? Marco hesitative. That hesitation was enough. Alessandro's eyes narrowed. Who? The access code came from inside the Marquetti system. A wave of whispers spread. Inside. Not an outsider. Not an enemy. Someone close. The family members immediately began accusing each other. Impossible. Check again. Someone must have stolen access. The room became chaotic. Elena walked silently. Then she noticed something. A small detail. Something she had seen earlier. During the auction preparations. The staff entrance. The security schedule. The location of the control room. She looked at Marco. Can I ask something? Everyone turned. Again. Another moment where she shouldn't have spoken. But she did. Who changed the presentation file? Marco Froneth. What? The message appeared on the main screen. Yes. But someone had to replace the original auction presentation. Plus, only 3 people had access. Who? Marco looked at the list. The technical supervisor. The event manager. And he stopped. And who? The assistant of one of the family members. The room became silent. Elena looked at the person standing near the back. The young man. One of the family assistants. His face changed. Only slightly, but enough. Security moved immediately. The man tried to leave. He didn't get far. Within seconds, 2 guards blocked the exit. Dante stared at him. Explain. The assistant remained silent, then suddenly laughed. A strange, nervous laugh. You all think you're untouchable. Alessandro stepped forward. Who sent you? The man looked at Elena. Not Alessandro. Her? You. Everyone looked confused. Elena Fronat. Me. You ruined everything. The man smiled bitterly. You walked in here and everyone started looking at you. You made him forget his duty. He pointed at Alessandro. You changed him. The room became still. Because everyone understood. This wasn't just an attack. It was jealousy, resentment, a belief that Elena had stolen something. Security dragged him away. The guests slowly began leaving. The evening was ruined, but the damage was already done. The family had witnessed something important. Elena wasn't the weakness. She was the person who found the weakness. Later that night, Alessandro stood in his office. The city lights reflected against the glass. Elena entered quietly. You should be resting. So should you. She smiled faintly. I don't think either of us is good at that. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Alessandro said, Today changed something. What? I realized something. He looked at her. When people attack me, I know how to respond. And when they attack your family, I know how to respond. Then what's different? His expression softened. When they attacked you, he stopped. Because admitting it was difficult. Elena waited. Finally, I was afraid. She looked surprised. Afraid? Yes. Of what? He looked away. Of losing someone who never belonged to this world. Elena was quiet. Then, Alessandro. Yes. I need you to understand something. He waited. I don't need you to protect me because you think I'm fragile. I don't. I know. She smiled. That's why I'm still here. The next morning, something unexpected happened. A press conference was announced. Everyone assumed Alessandro would deny everything. Distance himself. Protect the family image. That was what everyone expected. Especially the Marquetti elders. But Alessandro did the opposite. The press gathered outside the Marquetti headquarters. Cameras. Reporters. Questions. When Alessandro stepped onto the stage, the crowd became silent. Recently, there have been many stories about my personal life. He paused. I will not apologize for knowing someone who deserves respect. The reporters immediately started asking questions. Mr. Marquetti, is Elena Carter your partner? Is she replacing Sofia Bellini? Does your family approve? Alessandro wiped, then answered. Elena Carter is not replacing anyone. A pause. Because she was never competing with anyone. The cameras flashed. The world listened. She entered my family's world because of her ability. She earned respect because of her character. And anyone who judges her by her appearance, her background, or anything other than who she is. His eyes became colder. Is not someone whose opinion matters to me. Across the city, Elena watched the broadcast. She had expected many things. Denial. Compromise. A careful statement. Not this. Not him choosing publicly. That evening, Sophia watched the same broadcast. Her expression was calm. Too calm. Her mother noticed. You are not angry. Sophia slowly placed down her glass. No. Then what are you? She looked toward the television, where Alessandro stood beside Elena. Not ashamed. Not uncertain. Certain. Sophia smiled. I finally understand. What? She isn't the problem. Her eyes narrowed. She's the reason he changed. And somewhere else. Someone else watched too. Someone who had been waiting. Someone who knew the Marquetti family had just made its biggest mistake. Because Alessandro had chosen Elena publicly, which meant there was only one way left to destroy him. Not by attacking her, but by revealing the secret she didn't know. The secret hidden inside the Marquetti family. A secret that could change everything, including the way Elena saw Alessandro forever. The world changed after the press conference. Not immediately. Not completely. But enough. Before, Elena Carter was the woman everyone whispered about. The outsider. The event planner. The person who somehow attracted the attention of Alessandro Marquetti. After that day, people started using different words. Capable. Fearless. Unusual. Dangerous. The last one was the most accurate. Because people who were used to controlling the game were always afraid of someone who refused to play by their rules. Elena never expected approval. That was the strange part. Even after Alessandro publicly defended her, even after the media began changing their opinions, she didn't suddenly become comfortable in the Marquetti world. She didn't start wearing expensive jewelry. She didn't hire assistants. She didn't change the way she spoke. She was still Elena, the woman who arrived early, the woman who thanked every staff member, the woman who fixed problems before anyone noticed. And that was exactly why the Marquetti family slowly began respecting her. Not because Alessandro chose her, because they finally saw why he did. One morning, Elena arrived at Marquetti Holdings for another event meeting. The atmosphere was different. People who once avoided eye contact now greeted her. "Good morning, Ms. Carter." "Good morning." "The flowers arrived." "Great." "Did you check the quality?" "Yes." She smiled. "Thank you." A junior employee watched this interaction from the hallway. A few months ago, no one in the building would have spoken so casually with an outsider. Now, they treated her like she belonged. Alessandro noticed. He stood beside Marco near the office entrance. "You look satisfied." Marco glanced at him. "I am." "Why?" "Because 6 months ago, everyone feared you. And now they fear disappointing her." Alessandro almost smiled. "That's not true." Marco raised an eyebrow. "You don't believe that?" "No." A pause. "She is not someone people fear." Marco looked toward Elena. "Then what is she?" Alessandro watched her explain a design change to a team of executives. Calm, confident, completely herself. He answered quietly. "Someone people trust." But trust was exactly what the enemy wanted to destroy. Because while the public was beginning to accept Elena, the old secrets of the Marquetti family were starting to surface. The problem began with a missing document. A financial report. Nothing dramatic. At least, not at first. A file connected to one of the family's oldest companies had disappeared. The kind of thing that happened in large corporations. Usually. But Alessandro knew better. Things didn't simply disappear in the Marquetti organization. Someone removed them. The board meeting became tense. "We need to delay the acquisition." "No. We cannot proceed without the documents. We can recreate them." Dante shook his head. "No." Everyone became silent. Because Dante rarely interrupted. "The missing file contains information from 15 years ago." Alessandro looked at him. "Why is that important?" His father didn't answer immediately. That was unusual. "What are you hiding?" The room went silent. That evening, Alessandro returned home later than usual. Elena was waiting, not because she was worried, because she knew something was wrong. "You didn't eat." He looked at the table. "You noticed. You always touch your watch when you're stressed." He looked down. His hand was resting on his watch. A small smile appeared. "You noticed too much. Occupational habit. Event planning." "No." She looked at him. "People." He sat down. For a moment, he considered saying nothing. The old Alessandro would have. Problems were handled internally. Feelings were private. Weaknesses were hidden. But Elena had changed something. She had made honesty feel less dangerous. "There is something about my family you don't know." Elena became serious. "What?" "A long time ago, before I was born." He paused. "There was an internal conflict. Between family members." "Yes." "What happened?" "Someone betrayed us." Elena waited. "Who?" "I don't know." The answer surprised her. "You don't know." "No one does." "How is that possible?" Alessandro looked toward the window. "Because the evidence disappeared." Elena thought carefully. "Like the document." He looked at her. "Exactly." She stood and walked toward the table where he had left some papers. "Can I see?" He hesitated, not because he didn't trust her, because he was about to let her enter a part of his world that had destroyed people before. Then he handed her the file. She read silently. 10 minutes. 20. Alessandro watched her expression. Most people looked overwhelmed when facing Marquetti family information. Elena looked focused. Finally, she spoke. The numbers don't match. He frowned. What? These transactions. She pointed. Look. She moved the documents closer. This company reported losses here. Yes. But the following year, the same company expanded. Meaning the money didn't disappear. A pause. It moved. Alessandro looked at the documents. Again. This time differently. Because he wasn't looking at them as a family member. He was looking at them as a problem. And Elena was seeing patterns. How did you notice that? She shrugged. Because events work the same way. He looked confused. What? When something goes wrong during a large event, people usually look at the obvious problem. The broken decoration, the missing supplier, the late guest. But the real issue is usually somewhere else. She tapped the paper. Someone moved something. The next morning, Alessandro reopened the investigation. And Elena helped. Not officially, not publicly, but behind the scenes. She created timelines, compared records, found connections. She wasn't trained in business warfare. She wasn't a detective, but she understood people. And sometimes, people revealed more than numbers. 3 days later, they found something. A hidden account, connected to an old family associate. A man who had disappeared years ago. A man everyone believed was dead. When Alessandro saw the name, his expression changed. Impossible. Elena looked at him. Who was he? He was silent. Then, my uncle. The room became still. Your uncle? Adrian Marquetti. He's alive. Alessandro stared at the document. He was the person my grandfather trusted most. Then why did everyone think he was gone? His voice became quiet. Because my family believed he betrayed us. That night, the truth began to emerge. The missing files, the financial movements, the recent attacks. They were connected. Someone had been preparing for years. And Elena understood something. This wasn't about her. She had simply stepped into the middle of a war that started long before she arrived. But when the news reached the family, some people didn't see Elena as a helper. They saw her as the person who exposed their secrets. At the next family gathering, Lorenzo stood publicly. Perhaps we should consider whether outsiders should have access to family matters. Everyone became quiet. Elena understood. This was no longer subtle. He was blaming her. Again. Before Alessandro could speak, she raised her hand slightly, stopping him. Then she looked at Lorenzo. I agree. Everyone looked surprised. You agree? Elena nodded. Yes. She stood calmly. If someone doesn't belong in a room, they shouldn't be there. A pause. But belonging should be decided by contribution, not by birth. Silence. And if the only reason someone wants me gone is because I found a problem they ignored, she smiled. Then maybe the problem isn't me. Nobody spoke. Because she didn't attack. She didn't insult. She simply told the truth. And truth was something the Marquetti family respected, even when it hurt. Later that night, Alessandro found her on the balcony. You know, you just challenged half my family. She smiled. Only half. He laughed. A real laugh. The kind Elena rarely saw. Then he became serious. You know what scares me? What? I spent my entire life surrounded by people trying to become powerful. He looked at her. And you became powerful without trying. Elena shook her head. No. Yes. No. She smiled. I became myself. A pause. And that was enough. For the first time in his life, Alessandro Marquetti understood something. A king didn't need someone who bowed beside him. He needed someone who stood beside him. Not behind. Not below. Beside. But the final battle was coming. Because Adrian Marquetti was not only alive, he was returning. And he wasn't coming back for forgiveness. He was coming back to reclaim the family, the empire, and everything Alessandro had built, including Elena, because Adrian knew the truth. The woman beside Alessandro was not his weakness. She was the only person capable of destroying his plan. The Marquetti family had always believed one thing. Power was inherited. A name, bloodline, a legacy passed from one generation to the next. For centuries, the family had protected that belief, until Elena Carter entered their world. Because she had no famous surname, no family empire, no inherited influence. And yet, standing in the center of their storm, she had done what many people born into power could never do. She remained herself. The return of Adrian Marquetti changed everything. The news was never made public. The family handled problems internally. That was their way. But inside the old villa, tension filled every hallway. People who had spent years believing the past was buried suddenly realized it had only been waiting. He wants a meeting. Alessandro looked at Marco. When? Tonight? Where? The old family estate. Alessandro's expression remained calm. But Elena saw it. The slight tightening of his hand. The controlled breathing. The signs no one else noticed. You knew this day would come. Alessandro looked at her. Yes. And you were preparing for it. Yes. But you weren't prepared for him actually returning. Silence. Because she was right. The old family estate sat outside the city. The same place where generations of Marquettis had made decisions. The same place where loyalty was tested. The same place where betrayal had happened 15 years earlier. When Alessandro arrived, every important family member was already there. Donna, Lorenzo, the elders, and standing near the fireplace, Adrian Marquetti, older than Alessandro remembered, but unchanged in one way. His eyes, cold, calculating. So, Adrian smiled. The future heir finally arrives. Alessandro didn't react. You disappeared. I survived. You betrayed the family. Adrian laughed softly. Is that what they told you? The room became tense. Dante stepped forward. Enough. Adrian looked at him. Still pretending you know the truth? Nobody spoke. Because the accusation was dangerous. Elena stood beside Alessandro. Adrian noticed immediately. His expression changed. Not surprise. Interest. So this is her. Alessandro's eyes hardened. Do not involve her. Adrian smiled. There it is. What? The thing everyone warned you about. He looked at Elena. You found someone you care about. A pause. And now you have something to lose. Elena expected fear. She expected intimidation. Instead, she simply looked at him. You seem very confident. Adrian raised an eyebrow. Excuse me? You keep talking about power. She stepped forward slightly. But people who truly have power don't need to remind everyone they have it. The room went silent. Even Alessandro looked surprised. Adrian studied her, then laughed. Interesting. What? I understand now. He looked at Alessandro. She is why you changed. The meeting continued. Adrian presented his version of the past. According to him, he had never betrayed the family. He had discovered corruption. He had tried to expose it. And the family had removed him to protect themselves. The problem? Some of the evidence supported his story. After the meeting, Alessandro returned to the villa library. He was silent, too silent. Elena found him there. You believe him. It wasn't a question. Alessandro looked at the documents. I don't know. That answer bothered him. Not because he admitted uncertainty. Because he rarely did. You don't trust your own family. I don't know who to trust. Elena walked closer. Then don't start with the family. He looked at her. Start with the facts. Together, they reviewed everything. Not emotions. Not assumptions. Evidence. Timelines. Documents. Names. And slowly, something became clear. Adrian wasn't lying about everything. But he wasn't telling the entire truth either. He didn't betray the family. Alessandro looked up. What? Elena pointed at the records. He didn't steal the money. Then who did? She moved another document forward. Someone who wanted both sides to destroy each other. Silence. The answer was worse than expected. Because the enemy wasn't outside. It had never been outside. The person behind everything was someone who had spent years hiding in plain sight. Someone who benefited from the family conflict. Someone everyone trusted. When the truth was revealed, the Marquetti family faced its greatest humiliation. They had spent 15 years searching for an enemy, only to discover the enemy had been sitting at their table. The confrontation happened at the family villa. Everyone was present. The traitor denied everything, until Elena placed the final document on the table. You forgot one thing. Everyone looked at her. What? People remember patterns. She looked at the evidence. You changed numbers. You changed names. You changed records. But you repeated the same mistake. The room was silent. What mistake? Elena looked directly at him. You assumed nobody was paying attention. The confession destroyed the last remaining lies. The family finally knew the truth. Adrian had been wrongfully blamed. Dante had protected the family name instead of searching for the truth. And Alessandro had inherited a burden created by someone else's choices. Later that night, Alessandro stood outside the villa. For once, there was no enemy. No accusation. No family battle. Only silence. Elena joined him. It's over. He nodded. Yes. You don't look happy. He smiled slightly. I don't know what happy feels like after years of fighting. She looked at him. Then maybe you should learn. A few weeks later, the Marquetti family held another gathering. But this time something was different. No whispers. No judgment. No questions about whether Elena belonged. Because everyone knew the answer. She had earned her place. Not because Alessandro loved her. Because she had proven who she was. The ceremony was held in the garden of the old estate. Not a political arrangement. Not a family agreement. A choice. Alessandro stood beneath the lights. For the first time, he wasn't wearing the expression of a man carrying an empire. He looked free. When Elena walked toward him, everyone watched. But this time, she didn't feel judged. She didn't feel examined. She didn't feel like she had to prove anything. She was simply walking towards someone she chose. Alessandro took her hand. I spent my entire life believing strength meant never needing anyone. He looked at her. You taught me I was wrong. A small smile appeared. Strength is finding someone who makes you want to become better. Elena looked at him. And I spent my life believing I had to make myself smaller to be accepted. She glanced at the people watching. Until I realized. She smiled. I was never too much. A pause. I was just surrounded by people who couldn't see enough. The wedding ended beneath a sky full of stars. The same world that once whispered about her now celebrated her. The same people who questioned her now respected her. But Elena didn't change. She never did. She still laughed loudly. Still spoke honestly. Still wore what made her feel beautiful. Still walked into rooms without asking permission. Because confidence was never about proving everyone wrong. It was about knowing who you were before anyone else had an opinion. Years later, people would tell the story of Alessandro Marquetti and Elena Carter. They would say the powerful heir fell in love with a woman who had nothing. But that was never true. Because Elena Carter had always possessed the one thing money couldn't buy. A fearless sense of self. She never needed the Marquetti name to become someone. She never needed a powerful man to give her value. She simply stood beside him, equal, proud, unchanged. And that was why he loved her. Because she never hid her curves. She never hid her voice. She never hid who she was. And the woman who refused to make herself smaller became the only person powerful enough to stand beside a king. 3 years later, the name Elena Marquetti no longer needed an explanation. That was the biggest change. At the beginning, people always introduced her with a question. You mean Alessandro Marchetti's wife? As if her identity existed only because of him. As if she had entered the family through a man's hand. But years had a way of changing people's opinions. Now, when business leaders spoke about the Marquetti group, they mentioned her first. Not because she married there. Because she helped rebuild the empire. The morning meeting at Marquetti headquarters began at 8. 8 years ago, Elena would never have imagined sitting at the head of a table surrounded by executives who once looked down on her. Yet here she was, a folder in front of her, coffee beside her, no hesitation in her voice. The expansion plan needs to change. The room became quiet. One executive adjusted his glasses. Again, Elena looked at him. Yes, not angry, not defensive, just certain. The current strategy focuses too much on reputation. She opened a document. But reputation without trust is temporary. A chart appeared on the screen. The family spent decades building fear. She paused. But fear doesn't create loyalty. Nobody interrupted. Because they had learned. When Elena spoke, there was usually a reason. Alessandro sat beside her, not above her, not leading the meeting alone. Beside her. That was something the old Marquetti family would have considered impossible. The heir of the family sharing authority with someone who wasn't born into it. But Alessandro had learned something important. A powerful person didn't lose power by recognizing someone else's strength. They gained more. After the meeting, Marco followed Alessandro into his office. You know, your grandfather would have hated this. Alessandro smiled slightly. Probably. Your wife changing family policy. She isn't changing it. Marco raised an eyebrow. Then what is she doing? Alessandro looked through the glass wall. Elena was speaking with a group of young employees. Listening. Actually listening. She's fixing what we ignored. That afternoon, an unexpected visitor arrived. Adrian Marquetti, the uncle who had once been accused of betrayal. The man who had disappeared for years. After the truth was revealed, he had refused to return to the family. Until now. Alessandro looked surprised. I didn't expect you. Adrian sat down. You shouldn't. A pause. I came because I heard something. What? Someone is trying to destroy the company. Alessandro's expression changed. Who? I don't know. You came here without knowing? Adrian smiled. You always did have your father's patience problem. Alessandro ignored the comment. What do you know? Adrian placed a file on the table. 3 companies, all recently connected to Marquetti suppliers. Alessandro opened it. They look legitimate. That's the point. When Elena entered the office, she immediately noticed the atmosphere. What happened? Alessandro handed her the file. She read silently. 10 minutes. Then 20. Finally, she looked up. Someone isn't trying to steal from you. Alessandro frowned. What? They're trying to make you look unstable. Adrian looked interested. Explain. Elena pointed at the documents. These companies are not taking money. They are creating unnecessary pressure. Small delays. Minor losses. Supplier problems. She looked at Alessandro. They want the board to believe you're losing control. Silence. Because she was right. The question is why? Alessandro said. Elena leaned back. Who benefits if you lose your position? Everyone became quiet. Because the answer was obvious. The Marquetti family had many ambitious people. Too many. That night, Alessandro found Elena in their garden. You knew. She looked up. Knew what? That this would happen? No. She smiled. But I knew something would. He sat beside her. Why? Because people don't attack things they don't consider valuable. A pause. The moment the family accepted me, I became part of the power structure. And power always attracts challenges. Alessandro looked at her. Does it ever bother you? What? That no matter how much you accomplish, some people will still say you only succeeded because of me? Elena was quiet for a moment. Then she smiled. Alessandro. Yes. People who want to misunderstand, you will always find a reason. She looked at him. I stopped trying to convince everyone a long time ago. But the next morning, someone made sure she couldn't ignore the rumors. A newspaper headline appeared. Marquetti Empire divided. Outsider wife controls family decisions. The article accused Elena of manipulating Alessandro, of using their marriage, of changing traditions. Within hours, the entire business world was discussing it. At the headquarters, executives waited for Alessandro's reaction. They expected anger, denial, a public defense. Instead, Alessandro walked into the meeting room, placed the newspaper on the table, and said, "She doesn't control my decisions." Everyone looked at him. "She improves them." Silence. "Anyone who believes my wife's influence is a weakness." He looked around the room. Doesn't understand leadership. But Elena knew something. This wasn't just an attack from outsiders. The article had information that only someone inside the company could know. Someone close. Someone powerful. Someone who wanted her gone. That evening, she found a small envelope on her desk. No name. No sender. Inside was a single photograph. A photograph from years ago. Before she met Alessandro. Before the Marquetti family. Before everything changed. On the back was one sentence. "You don't belong here. Ask your husband what happened before he met you." Elena stared at the message. For the first time in years, she felt something she rarely felt. Uncertainty, because whoever sent this was not attacking her confidence. They were attacking her trust. Elena did not show Alessandro the photograph immediately. That surprised him, because they had always promised each other honesty. But she needed time, not because she didn't trust him, because she wanted to understand her own feelings first. For years, she had fought against one thing, being seen as someone who needed protection. She refused to become that person, even with Alessandro, especially with Alessandro. 3 days passed. The investigation continued. The company crisis grew, and the photograph remained hidden in her desk, until Alessandro finally noticed. "You are quiet." Elena looked up. "Am I?" "Yes." She smiled slightly. "You notice everything now? I learned from you." That almost made her laugh. Almost. That night, she gave him the photograph. He looked at it, and immediately became still. Too still. Elena noticed. "What is it?" Alessandro didn't answer. "Alessandro." He placed the photo down. "Where did you get this?" "Someone sent it." "Who?" "I don't know." His expression changed. Not fear. Regret. And that hurt more. "What happened?" He remained silent. Then finally, "Before I met you," a pause, "there was someone who worked with the family." "Who?" "A woman." Elena waited. Her name was Isabella. The name meant nothing, but the way he said it did. Was she important? Alessandro looked away. She was part of a difficult time. That's not an answer. I know. And for the first time in their marriage, Elena felt distance. Not physical distance. Emotional distance. The kind that came from an old secret. "I don't need you to have a perfect past," she said quietly. "But I need to know if the person beside me is honest." Alessandro closed his eyes. Because she was right. Isabella was connected to a family conflict. She knew information about the Marquetti family. And I believe she betrayed us. "But you were wrong." "I don't know." The answer hurt. Not because he had secrets. Because he had carried them alone. The next day, Elena made a decision. She would not investigate behind Alessandro's back. She would not run. She would not assume. She would do what she always did. Face the problem directly. The entire family gathered again. Years ago, Elena entered these rooms as an outsider. Now she entered as someone everyone waited for. She placed the photograph on the table. "We need to talk." Nobody spoke, because everyone recognized it. Dante's expression changed. "Where did you get this?" "Someone sent it." Silence. Then Adrian spoke. "She's back." Everyone turned. "Who?" Adrian looked at Alessandro. "Isabella." The name returned like a ghost. A woman everyone thought was gone. A woman connected to the darkest period of the family. But Elena noticed something. Everyone was afraid of the name. Not angry. Afraid. That meant there was something they didn't know. The truth finally emerged. Isabella had not betrayed the Marquetti family. She had tried to expose the same person who had manipulated the family years ago. But she disappeared before she could reveal everything. And the person behind it all had never stopped. The final confrontation happened inside the company. The traitor was not an enemy, not a rival. It was a senior executive who had spent decades building trust. Someone who believed the Marquetti family was his. Someone who believed Alessandro was too young. And Elena, too ordinary. When he was exposed, he looked at Elena. You. Bitter smile. You ruined everything. Elena remained calm. No. She shook her head. Your choices ruined everything. You just didn't expect someone to notice. After everything ended, Alessandro stood beside her outside the headquarters. You could have left. Elena looked at him. Yes, but you didn't. No. Why? She smiled. Because I never stayed because of your name. A pause. I stayed because of you. Years later, people would still tell stories about the Marquetti family, about the empire, about the power, about the man who inherited everything. But the story everyone remembered most was about the woman who walked into a world that told her she didn't belong. And instead of changing herself, she changed the world around her. Because Elena Carter Marquetti never needed permission to shine. She never needed approval to exist. She never needed anyone to tell her she was enough. She already knew. She never hid her curves. She never hid her voice. She never hid who she was. And that was why she became unforgettable.